The Christmas that changed everything. The sound wasn't loud. It was just one sharp smack against the soft skin of my 6-month-old daughter's face. But in that single second, everything I believed about my family shattered. It happened at exactly 7:14 on Christmas evening. My older sister, Brooke, didn't look horrified after striking my baby. She didn't apologize. She didn't even check if Lily was okay. Instead, she glanced toward the phone sitting on the dining table, frowned because the crying interrupted her live stream, and sighed. "Can somebody make her stop crying?" she said without emotion. "I'm live." I stood frozen, holding my screaming daughter tightly against my chest, while her tiny body shook with fear. Her tears soaked through my sweater. Around the table, nobody moved. My mother lowered her eyes to her plate. My father pretended not to notice. The room became painfully silent. Within 48 hours, that single moment destroyed my sister's public image, exposed decades of family secrets, and forced me to walk away from the people I had spent my entire life trying to keep close. But it also gave me something I never expected. The truth. The truth about my parents. The truth about my sister. And finally, the truth about myself. My name is Chelsea. I'm 32 years old, married to an Army captain named Garrett, and I work as a pediatric emergency room nurse. Every shift, I care for children during the worst moments of their lives. I've seen broken bones, burns, abuse cases, and terrified parents praying their children would be okay. Because of my job, I know exactly how fragile babies are. That's why what happened on Christmas wasn't something I could simply forgive. Not this time. Growing up, life in our family revolved around one person. My older sister, Brooke. She was 5 years older than me and somehow managed to become the center of every room she entered. It wasn't because she was especially kind or thoughtful. It wasn't because she earned people's admiration. She simply expected to be the most important person wherever she went. And my parents made sure she stayed that way. If Brooke wanted attention, she got it. If Brooke wanted expensive gifts, she got them. If Brooke caused problems, someone else took the blame. That had been our family's pattern for as long as I could remember. My mother, Patty, spent years selling insurance before eventually retiring. My father, Don, worked at a textile factory most of his adult life. Quiet and hardworking, he preferred hiding inside his woodworking shed rather than dealing with conflict inside the house. Whenever Brooke exploded, Dad disappeared. Whenever Brooke crossed the line, Mom cleaned up the mess. Together, they became experts at pretending nothing was wrong. By the time Brooke reached her 30s, she'd built an incredibly successful career online. She had millions of followers. Brands paid her thousands of dollars to promote products. Her social media pages were filled with smiling family photos, inspirational quotes, perfect vacations, and carefully staged moments that made her life seem flawless. To the internet, Brooke looked warm, generous, and loving. People called her inspiring. People trusted her. People wished they had a sister like her. They had no idea who she really was. Then there was me. I wasn't famous. I worked double shifts through nursing school. I graduated without anyone handing me opportunities. While Brooke posed for cameras, I spent nights caring for sick children. While she built an audience, I built a career. And honestly, I never minded living a quieter life. Not until I became a mother. Because once Lily was born, I made myself one promise. She would never grow up believing she had to compete for love the way I did. She would know she mattered simply because she existed. No performances. No favorites. No conditions. Just love. That Christmas meant everything to me. It was Lily's very first Christmas. Garrett and I had recently settled into our own home, and for the first time we were hosting the entire family ourselves. I wanted warmth, laughter, real memories, not carefully staged photos for social media. 3 days before Christmas, I called Brooke. "I have one request," I told her. "No filming during dinner." She laughed lightly. "Seriously?" "Yes. I don't want Lily's first Christmas becoming online content." There was a short pause. Then Brooke answered with an almost amused tone. "Relax, Chelsea. I'm not some kind of monster." Those words would replay in my head for weeks afterward. Garrett overheard the conversation while polishing his army boots at the kitchen table. "You trust her?" he asked. "I want to." He nodded slowly. "If she ignores your rules, I'll handle it." That was Garrett. He never spoke dramatically. He simply stated facts. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow covering the neighborhood. Our house smelled like cinnamon, baked ham, and homemade pie. Garrett hung stockings above the fireplace while Christmas music played softly through the speakers. Lily looked absolutely adorable, wearing a tiny red velvet outfit with white trim. She looked like a little Christmas ornament come to life. Watching her smile made every late-night feeding, every exhausting shift at work, and every sleepless night feel worth it. For a little while, everything felt perfect. My parents arrived first. Mom immediately scooped Lily into her arms, showering her with kisses. Dad settled into the living room recliner and quietly watched football. The atmosphere felt peaceful. Normal. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Then, about 40 minutes late, Brooke finally arrived. Even before she stepped inside, I heard the sharp click of her high heels on the front porch. She entered wearing an expensive cream-colored sweater, designer boots, and a bright smile that looked practiced. She hugged Mom first, complimented the decorations second. Only then did she glance toward Lily. "Oh," she said casually. "She's gotten so big." It sounded less like someone talking about her niece, and more like someone commenting on new furniture. She dropped her oversized designer handbag onto the kitchen counter. As she unzipped it, I noticed something inside. A portable ring light. My stomach tightened immediately. She had promised not to film. Maybe she brought it just in case. Maybe she intended to keep her word. I wanted to believe that. Across the room, Garrett noticed it too. Our eyes met for just a second. He gave me a quiet nod. No words were needed. We were both paying attention now. Neither of us realized that Christmas dinner was only minutes away, and our family was about to change forever. Dinner started better than I expected. For nearly 40 minutes, everything felt almost normal. The table was filled with roasted ham, mashed potatoes, homemade rolls, sweet potatoes, green beans, and my mother's favorite cranberry casserole. My dad quietly ate while watching football highlights between conversations. Mom laughed about a funny story from church. Garrett answered a few questions about army life. Even Brooke behaved herself. At least on the surface. Although every few minutes I caught her glancing down at the phone resting in her lap. She wasn't really listening to anyone. She was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Lily started getting sleepy halfway through dinner. She rubbed her little eyes and let out the soft cries every tired baby makes. I carried her upstairs to nurse her and rock her for a few minutes. When she settled down, I kissed her forehead and brought her back downstairs. The second I stepped into the dining room, my heart dropped. Brooke had already started. Her phone was standing upright against the gravy dish. The ring light was clipped to the back of her chair. Its bright glow illuminated her face, while the rest of us sat under normal dining room lights. The screen was filled with hearts and comments flying upward. She was live streaming. Without asking. Without permission. Inside my own home. I walked toward her. "Brooke." She barely looked up. "What?" "I asked you not to film." She smiled at the camera instead of me. "It's just a holiday live stream. My followers love family moments. It's harmless." "No," I answered calmly. "It's not. I asked you not to." She rolled her eyes. "You worry too much." Before I could say anything else, Lily began crying. Not loudly. Not uncontrollably. Just the soft, tired cry of a 6-month-old baby who needed comfort. I gently bounced her in my arms. "It's okay, sweetheart." Brooke's smile disappeared. She glanced at the comments racing across her screen. Then back at Lily. Then back at the phone. Her expression changed. She looked irritated. Not concerned. Annoyed. The crying was ruining her video. Without taking her eyes off the live stream, Brooke sighed. "Can somebody make her stop?" Nobody answered. Lily cried again. Brooke's jaw tightened. Then she said the words I'll never forget. "I'm live." As if that explained everything. As if a baby's feelings mattered less than strangers watching online. I opened my mouth to respond. But before I could, Brooke leaned across the table. Everything happened in less than a second. Her hand came down. Hard. An open-handed slap landed directly across Lily's tiny cheek. The sound echoed through the room. For one horrifying moment, everything stopped. Then Lily screamed. It wasn't an ordinary cry. It was pure fear. Pure pain. The kind of cry that tears through a parent's heart. I instinctively pulled her against my chest. She buried her face into my shoulder, shaking violently while sobbing. My entire body went cold. I looked down. A bright red handprint was already appearing on her tiny face. Nobody moved. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even Brooke. She simply looked back toward her phone, almost annoyed that the crying had become louder, as if she'd expected the slap to solve the problem. My mother finally spoke. "Oh." She sounded uncomfortable. Not because Lily had been hit, because things had become awkward. Dad stared silently at his plate. His fork remained frozen halfway to his mouth. He couldn't even look at me. Then Garrett stood up. He didn't slam his chair. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He calmly folded his napkin and placed it beside his plate. Every movement was slow. Controlled. Disciplined. The same calm confidence I'd seen before whenever he handled difficult situations. He walked toward Brooke. She looked up at him for the first time. Her confident smile disappeared. Garrett stopped beside her chair. His voice remained steady. "Leave." One word. Nothing more. Brooke blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Leave. She laughed nervously. Oh my God. It wasn't even a real slap. She's acting like I hurt the baby. Garrett didn't react. He simply repeated himself. Get out! Brooke looked toward our parents. She expected someone to defend her. Someone always had. Mom looked at me. Honey, she didn't mean it. She was frustrated. You're making too much of this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She hit my daughter. It was just a little tap. My mother's words hit almost as hard as Brooke's hand. A little tap? I whispered. You call that a little tap? I looked at my father. Dad? Nothing. He stayed completely silent. He couldn't even meet my eyes. That silence hurt more than anything else. Garrett walked to the front door. He opened it. Cold December air rushed into the house. He turned back toward Brooke. I'm not asking again. You need to leave. For the first time all evening. She realized nobody was joking. She grabbed her phone, unclipped the ring light, stuffed everything into her expensive handbag, without apologizing, without looking at Lily, without saying a single kind word. She walked past Garrett and disappeared into the cold night. The front door closed behind her. The dining room became painfully quiet. Only Lily's sobs could be heard. I gently rocked her while whispering comforting words into her ear. Slowly, her cries became softer. But my own heart was racing. Christmas dinner was over. The holiday I'd spent weeks planning had ended in a nightmare. I looked around the table. My parents still hadn't apologized. Neither of them had asked if Lily was okay. Instead, they looked irritated that family dinner had been interrupted. At that moment, something inside me changed. For years, I'd convinced myself my parents simply favored Brooke. Now I understood something much worse. They would protect her. Even after she hurt a child. Even after she hurt their own granddaughter. And that realization was far more painful than the slap itself. The silence after Brooke left was almost unbearable. Christmas music was still playing softly in the background. The candles on the table continued burning. The food was still warm. But none of it mattered anymore. The holiday was over. I carried Lily into the living room while Garrett quietly locked the front door. She had finally stopped screaming, but every few seconds she let out tiny hiccups from crying so hard. I gently kissed the red mark on her cheek. Seeing that small handprint nearly broke me. No baby should ever experience fear like that. Especially from someone who was supposed to love her. Behind me, I heard dishes clattering. My mother had started clearing the table as if nothing unusual had happened. Without looking at me, she sighed. I hope you're happy. I turned around slowly. Happy? You embarrassed your sister on Christmas. I stared at her in disbelief. Mom, she hit Lily. My mother's shoulders rose in a tired shrug. She lost her temper. It happens. I couldn't believe those words had actually come from her mouth. It happens? She's 6 months old. She wasn't trying to hurt her, Mom replied. Brooke has been under a lot of stress lately. The divorce hasn't been easy. There it was again. Another excuse. Another reason why Brooke's behavior somehow wasn't Brooke's fault. For as long as I could remember, every terrible thing she'd done came with an explanation. She's stressed. She's emotional. She's overwhelmed. She's having a hard time. Everyone else was expected to adjust around her. No one ever expected Brooke to control herself. I looked toward my father. Dad? For a second, I thought he might finally say something. Instead, he slowly stood up, picked up his coat, and walked toward the door. You aren't going to say anything. He stopped with his hand on the doorknob. I don't get involved in arguments. That was it. No concern for Lily. No disappointment in Brooke. No apology. Nothing. He walked out the door behind my mother. Their car pulled away a few moments later. Just like that. Christmas was over. Garrett sat beside me on the kitchen floor. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Lily had finally fallen asleep against my shoulder. The house felt strangely empty. You okay? He asked quietly. I shook my head. No. But Lily is safe. And that's all I care about. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You did exactly what a mother should do. I leaned against him. I keep wondering... What? Would they have reacted differently if it had been someone else's baby? Garrett didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, I don't think this was ever about the baby. It was about Brooke. And your parents chose her. Deep down. I already knew he was right. 3 days passed. Life slowly returned to normal. Garrett went back to work. I returned to the pediatric emergency department. Lily smiled again. The red mark on her cheek disappeared. Physically, she was perfectly fine. Emotionally, every loud sound made her flinch. Every unexpected movement startled her. The pediatrician assured me babies recover quickly. Still, every time she cried, Christmas replayed in my mind. Near the end of a 12-hour shift, my phone rang. Mom! I almost ignored it. But I answered. There wasn't even a greeting. You owe Brooke an apology. I actually laughed. I'm sorry? You humiliated her. In front of everyone. I leaned against the hospital hallway wall. She hit my child. It wasn't that serious. It was one mistake. She's devastated. No, I replied calmly. She's facing consequences. Those words made my mother angry. You've always been jealous of her. I closed my eyes. There it was. The accusation I'd heard since childhood. Whenever Brooke got in trouble, somehow it became my fault. The next morning, another message appeared. This one came from someone I didn't recognize. Hello, Chelsea. My name is Tara Jennings. I represent Brooke professionally. She's deeply upset about what happened during Christmas dinner. We believe this misunderstanding can be resolved privately before unnecessary damage is done. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I read the message twice. Not once did it ask about Lily. Not once did it apologize. Not once did it acknowledge that Brooke had struck a baby. It focused on one thing. Damage control. Protecting Brooke's image. Nothing else. I deleted the message. Instead of calling Brooke, I called someone else. My Aunt Janine. Dad's younger sister. She answered on the second ring. I've been expecting your call. Something in her voice immediately caught my attention. It sounded like she'd been carrying a secret. Aunt Janine, did something like this ever happen before? The line stayed quiet for several seconds. Finally, she sighed. Yes. My heart sank. What do you mean? This wasn't the first time Brooke hurt a child. I felt every muscle in my body tighten. What are you talking about? Janine told me about Thanksgiving 6 years earlier. I hadn't been there because Garrett and I had been living in Texas at the time. Our cousin Kevin had brought his 4-year-old son, Marcus. Brooke had been filming another family video. Marcus accidentally wandered into the camera frame while playing. Instead of moving him gently, Brooke grabbed his arm so hard he screamed. She squeezed until bruises appeared. His mother wanted to call the police. Instead, my parents convinced everyone to keep it quiet. They even gave Kevin and Stephanie money, Janine admitted softly. They said it was to help with bills. But everyone knew what it really was. Hush money? I couldn't breathe. My own parents had covered up another incident. Years before Lily was even born. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. I wanted to. Your mother begged me not to. She said exposing Brooke would destroy her career. Career. Not family. Not the children. Not the victims. Her career. I suddenly realized something horrifying. Christmas wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. And everyone around Brooke had spent years pretending it wasn't happening. I thanked Janine before ending the call. Then I sat quietly in my living room while Lily slept peacefully nearby. I looked at my daughter. Tiny. Innocent. Completely dependent on me to protect her. At that moment, I made a promise. No matter what it cost. No matter who got angry. No matter what secrets came to light. I would never allow anyone, including my own family, to hurt her again. Not ever. For the rest of that day, I couldn't stop thinking about what Aunt Janine had told me. Another child. Another family gathering. Another cover-up. And somehow I had never heard a single word about it. The more I thought about it, the more questions filled my mind. How many times had Brooke crossed the line? How many people had stayed quiet? And how many lies had my parents told to keep protecting her? I had to know. The following morning, after Garrett left for work, I called my cousin Kevin. I hadn't spoken to him in years. When he answered, there was an awkward silence. Kevin, it's Chelsea. I know. His voice sounded cautious. I heard what happened at Christmas. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me. Can we talk about Marcus? Another long silence. Then he quietly said, It's about time someone asked. That afternoon, Garrett stayed home with Lily while I drove 2 hours to Kevin and Stephanie's house. The moment Stephanie opened the front door, I could see the hesitation in her eyes. She wasn't sure if she could trust another member of my family. Honestly, I didn't blame her. After everything she'd been through, I probably wouldn't have trusted me either. She invited me inside. Marcus was playing video games in the living room. He was older now. Almost 10. A normal, happy kid. But Stephanie told me things hadn't always been that way. She brought out an old photo album. Hidden between family pictures was an envelope. Inside were several photographs. She handed me the first one. I felt sick. Dark purple fingerprints wrapped around Marcus's tiny upper arm. The bruises were unmistakable. Someone had grabbed him with incredible force. I looked up. Brooke did this? Stephanie slowly nodded. He accidentally walked into her camera shot. She completely lost control. According to Stephanie, Brooke had been recording a sponsored Thanksgiving video. Everything had to look perfect. The food, the decorations, the smiling family. Marcus, only 4 years old, chased the dog through the dining room without realizing he had entered the camera frame. Brooke exploded. She yanked him backward by his arm. Then she grabbed a fistful of his hair. When he cried, she squeezed even harder. Marcus screamed so loudly that everyone ran into the room. Stephanie rushed over and pulled her son away. She wanted to call the police immediately. But before she could, my parents stepped in. They begged us not to report it, Kevin said quietly. They said Brooke was under pressure. They promised it would never happen again. Stephanie let out a bitter laugh. They even brought us an envelope with $5,000. They called it financial help. It wasn't help. It was payment. They wanted us to stay quiet. I lowered my eyes. Every word felt heavier than the last. My own parents had chosen money over accountability. Again. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. Stephanie looked genuinely surprised. Your mother told us you already knew. I felt my stomach twist. What? She said you understood the situation. I never knew any of this. Stephanie shook her head slowly. I guess she lied to both of us. Before leaving, Stephanie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. If you're finally going to tell the truth, don't stop halfway. There are probably things you still don't know. Those words stayed with me during the entire drive home. Because deep down, I knew she was right. That evening, I told Garrett everything. He listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, he walked to the kitchen table and grabbed a notebook. What are you doing? Building a timeline. He wrote down every incident we knew about. Christmas, Thanksgiving, the dates, the people involved, the witnesses, everything. Military training had taught him that patterns matter. And this wasn't random. It was escalating. After staring at the list for several minutes, Garrett looked up. This didn't start with Marcus. It probably started years before. His words hit me hard. Because suddenly, I remembered someone. Grandma Ruth. My grandmother had passed away 2 years earlier. She was the one person in our family who never played favorites. She treated Brooke and me exactly the same. More importantly, she wasn't afraid to speak the truth, even when nobody wanted to hear it. When Brooke misbehaved as a child, Grandma Ruth never excused it. She corrected her. My parents hated that. Mom often complained that Grandma was too harsh. Now, I wondered if Grandma had seen things the rest of us had ignored. Her old house was still sitting empty outside Sanford. Nobody had sold it yet because my parents and their siblings couldn't agree on what to do with it. I still had a spare key. The next morning, I drove there alone. Walking through the front door felt like stepping back in time. The house still smelled like lavender soap and old wood. Everything remained exactly where Grandma had left it. Her rocking chair sat beside the living room window. Her Bible rested on the coffee table. Even her reading glasses remained beside it. It felt as though she had simply stepped outside for a moment. I wandered into her bedroom. Inside the closet sat several neatly labeled storage boxes. Most contained old photographs, recipes, Christmas decorations, and family keepsakes. Then I noticed one box marked personal. I carefully lifted it onto the bed. Inside were birthday cards, old letters, family documents, and one sealed envelope. Across the front, written in Grandma Ruth's careful handwriting, were 5 words that made my heart stop. For Chelsea, when the time comes. My hands began shaking. She had written this specifically for me. Long before Christmas. Long before Lily. Long before any of this happened. Almost as if she knew. I stared at the envelope for several moments, then carefully slipped it into my purse. Whatever was inside, I wanted to read it at home with Garrett beside me. Something told me this letter was about to change everything. And for the first time, I truly believed my grandmother had been carrying our family's biggest secret all along. The drive home felt longer than usual. The sealed envelope sat on the passenger seat beside me. Every time I glanced at it, I felt a strange mix of curiosity and fear. My grandmother had written my name on it years ago. She hadn't addressed it to my parents. Not to Brooke. To me. Somehow she had known I would eventually need it. I just didn't know why. When I arrived home, Garrett was sitting on the living room floor playing with Lily. The moment he saw my face, he knew something had happened. You found something? I nodded. I haven't opened it yet. He gently picked Lily up and carried her to her nursery. After she fell asleep, we sat together at the kitchen table. The envelope rested between us. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I carefully broke the seal. Inside were 2 handwritten pages. The familiar handwriting immediately brought tears to my eyes. Grandma Ruth. Even after all this time, it felt like she was sitting beside me. The letter began simply, "Dear Chelsea, if you're reading this, it means something finally happened. I've prayed for years that it wouldn't, but deep down I've always known it would." I swallowed hard and continued reading. Grandma didn't waste words. She got straight to the point. She wrote that Brooke had shown disturbing behavior ever since she was a little girl. Not ordinary childhood tantrums. Not simple jealousy. Something much darker. She described an incident when Brooke was only 8 years old. A classmate had won first prize in an art contest. Brooke became furious. During recess, she punched the little girl in the stomach so hard the child collapsed crying. The school called my parents immediately, instead of allowing Brooke to face the consequences. Mom and Dad quietly transferred her to another school. The incident disappeared, at least publicly. The next story happened years later. Brooke was 15. One of our younger cousins accidentally spilled orange juice on Brooke's new shoes during a family barbecue. Instead of brushing it off, Brooke twisted the little girl's wrist until she screamed in pain. My parents blamed it on rough play. Grandma wrote that she watched the entire thing happen. She knew the truth. No one listened. There were more stories, each one worse than the last. Every single time, someone got hurt. Every single time. My parents stepped in. Excuses, apologies, money, promises. Anything except accountability. Then I reached the final page. The words nearly made me cry. Chelsea, your parents love both of you. But love without honesty becomes dangerous. They spent so many years protecting Brooke that they stopped protecting everyone else. One day you may have children of your own. If that day comes, promise me you'll choose truth over peace. Protect your child even if it costs you your family. Real love protects the innocent. It doesn't protect the guilty. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. The letter slipped from my hands onto the table. Garrett quietly reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She knew. I nodded. She knew everything. And she was trying to protect you. I wiped my eyes. No. She was trying to protect whoever Brooke hurt next. Neither of us had to say Lily's name. We were both thinking it. At the bottom of the letter, Grandma had added one final note. Everything you need is in the cedar chest upstairs. I've kept records of every incident I witnessed. One day, someone will need the truth. I believe that someone is you. I stared at those final words for several moments. Records? What kind of records? School reports? Medical documents? Letters? Grandma had been collecting evidence. Not rumors. I closed my eyes. Grandma hadn't exaggerated anything. Everything was documented. Officially. The next file contained hospital paperwork from several years later. A cousin had suffered a fractured wrist. Attached to the report was one of Grandma's handwritten notes. Brooke pushed her. Your parents told the doctors she simply fell. Another lie. Another cover-up. Another child. The final document stopped me cold. It was a handwritten letter from our former neighbor. She described watching Brooke torment a neighborhood cat, pinching it, pulling its tail, ignoring its cries. The neighbor ended the letter with one heartbreaking sentence. Something is deeply wrong with this girl, and everyone around her refuses to admit it. I slowly leaned back in my chair. 30 years. 30 years of lies. 30 years of silence. 30 years of innocent victims. And my grandmother had quietly preserved every piece of evidence because she knew someday someone would finally have the courage to tell the truth. As I gathered the documents back into the folder, I realized this wasn't just about Christmas anymore. It wasn't even just about Brooke. It was about an entire family that had spent decades choosing comfort over accountability. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The truth had stayed buried long enough. I brought the folder home that afternoon. Garrett cleared the kitchen table while I carefully spread every document across it. School records, medical reports, handwritten notes, letters. Everything my grandmother had protected for nearly 30 years. For hours, we organized the papers by date. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Every few years, Brooke lost control. Someone got hurt. My parents covered it up. Then life moved on as if nothing had happened. Until the next victim. Garrett studied the timeline in silence. Finally, he pointed toward the most recent entry. Christmas. Then he looked back at the earliest report. She was 8 years old. I nodded. Nearly 30 years. He folded his arms. This isn't random behavior. It's a pattern. And patterns usually get worse. His words made me think of every child Brooke might encounter in the future. Friends' children. Neighbors. future nieces or nephews. Maybe one day. Children of her own. The thought sent a chill through me. The following morning, my phone exploded with notifications, text messages, emails, social media alerts. Something had happened. I opened Instagram. There she was. Brooke. She'd uploaded a professionally edited video. Soft music played in the background. Her makeup looked flawless. The lighting was perfect. She stared into the camera with tears glistening in her eyes. I've stayed quiet long enough. I never imagined my own sister would try to destroy me. She paused dramatically. Christmas was heartbreaking. I accidentally startled my niece, and somehow that's been twisted into abuse. I felt my stomach knot. Accidentally? She slapped a 6-month-old baby. There had been nothing accidental about it. The video continued. My brother-in-law became aggressive. He physically intimidated me. I was forced out of the house. I've cried every day since. Not once. Not a single time. Did she apologize to Lily? Not once did she admit what actually happened. Instead, she painted herself as the victim. Within hours, the video had over 1 million views. The comments poured in. Stay strong, Brooke. Family can be toxic. Your sister sounds jealous. You deserve better. I kept scrolling. The lies spread faster than the truth ever could. Strangers who had never met me suddenly believed I was some bitter younger sister trying to ruin Brooke's life. By evening, hateful messages filled my inbox. You're disgusting. Leave Brooke alone. You're destroying your own family. Someone even found our home address and sent it anonymously. Oops, someone calls Child Protective Services on you. I immediately showed Garrett. His expression hardened. This stops now. He contacted military legal services for advice, while I began saving screenshots of every threatening message. Every email. Every fake accusation. Everything. The next surprise came 2 days later. Someone knocked on our front door. When I opened it, my mother stood there. She hadn't called. She hadn't apologized. She walked inside like nothing had happened. Without even asking about Lily, she sat at the kitchen table. We need to fix this. I crossed my arms. What exactly needs fixing? Brooke is losing sponsorships. Several companies had already paused advertising campaigns because of growing public criticism. Mom looked genuinely worried. Not about Lily. About Brooke's income. You need to tell people it was a misunderstanding. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to lie? I want you to protect your sister. I am protecting my daughter. Mom sighed heavily. You're being stubborn. No. I'm being a mother. Then I decided to ask the question I've been carrying for days. How many times? She frowned. What? How many children has Brooke hurt? For just a second, her face changed. Fear. Real fear. She knew the answer. She simply didn't want to say it. Instead, she stood up and grabbed her purse. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. She walked toward the door. You'll destroy this family. I looked straight into her eyes. No. The truth is doing that. She left without another word. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Garrett found me sitting alone in the living room. I stared at my grandmother's letter. I keep thinking about something. What? If Grandma hadn't kept these records, no one would have believed us. Garrett nodded. Evidence changes everything. He was right. Stories could be denied. Memories could be questioned. But official documents, those were much harder to dismiss. Before going to bed, I read Grandma's letter one more time. One sentence stood out more than all the others. Protect your child, even if it costs you your family. For the first time since Christmas, I finally understood exactly what she meant. Sometimes protecting the people you love means standing against the people who raised you. And no matter how painful that choice feels, it's still the right one. As I turned off the lights that night, I had no idea Brooke was already planning her next move. She wasn't finished fighting. In fact, the real battle was only beginning. A week after Christmas, Brooke announced another live stream. This one was different. She promoted it for days. Every few hours she posted countdowns, short videos, and emotional messages. It's time for me to finally tell my side of the story. Thousands of her followers shared the announcement. By Friday evening, nearly 50,000 people had already clicked the reminder. She wasn't trying to fix the situation. She was trying to win it. The afternoon before the live stream, I received another email from Tara, Brooke's publicist. The subject line read, "A professional courtesy." The email was polite. Almost too polite. It explained that Brooke planned to discuss our family during her broadcast. Tara suggested I avoid responding publicly because it could create unnecessary legal complications. I read the email twice before closing it. They wanted me to stay silent, just like my parents always had. Not this time. Garrett found me sitting at the kitchen table. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." I slid the laptop toward him. He quietly read the email. When he finished, he smiled slightly. "They're nervous." "You think so?" "They wouldn't send this if they weren't." That thought hadn't crossed my mind. Maybe he was right. Maybe Brooke knew she was losing control of the story. Friday night finally arrived. Lily was asleep upstairs. Garrett and I sat together in the living room. At exactly 8 o'clock, Brooke's live stream began. The production looked expensive. Warm lighting. A beautiful bookshelf behind her. Fresh flowers. A cup of tea placed perfectly beside her chair. Every detail looked carefully planned. Even her outfit had been chosen to make her appear soft and trustworthy. She smiled sadly into the camera. "Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I never imagined I'd have to defend myself against my own family." Within minutes, more than 60,000 people were watching. The comments poured across the screen faster than I could read them. "We love you. Stay strong. Praying for you." Brooke took a deep breath before speaking again. "My sister has spent weeks spreading lies about me. Christmas wasn't what people think." I reached toward my niece. She became startled. My brother-in-law overreacted and forced me out of the house. She paused just long enough for tears to form in her eyes. I've been heartbroken ever since. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Every sentence contained just enough truth to sound believable. Yes. She reached toward Lily, but she conveniently left out the slap. She called it a misunderstanding. She called Garrett's calm response intimidation. She completely rewrote reality. Then came the worst part. My sister has always struggled with jealousy. That sentence hit harder than I expected. She smiled sadly as she continued. While I worked hard to build a successful career, she chose a different path. I respected that. But unfortunately, she couldn't accept my success. Garrett immediately muted the television. You don't need to hear this. I nodded. He was right. Listening to someone rewrite my entire life wasn't helping anyone. When the live stream ended, Brooke thanked her followers for supporting her. The viewer count showed nearly 70,000 people had watched live. Within an hour, clips from the broadcast were everywhere online. Social media exploded. Unfortunately, so did the hate. Messages flooded my phone. You're jealous. You're ruining your sister's life. She deserves a better family. One person even suggested I should lose my nursing license. Another threatened to report Garrett to the army. People who had never met us suddenly believed they knew everything. It was exhausting. The following Monday, I received a phone call from the hospital. For a moment, I feared the worst. Instead, my supervisor calmly explained that dozens of fake online reviews had appeared about me. Someone had accused me of being cruel to children. Someone else claimed I mistreated patients. None of it was true. The reviews had clearly been coordinated. Thankfully, hospital administration recognized they were fake and removed them. Still, it proved something important. This wasn't staying online anymore. It was affecting real life. That evening, Garrett contacted a military friend who specialized in legal matters. His friend couldn't officially represent us because the issue involved civilians, but he recommended someone who could. The next morning, we met attorney Sandra Holt. She listened carefully while reviewing every document. Grandma's notes, school records, medical reports, screenshots, threatening messages, fake reviews, everything! She remained quiet until she finished reading. Then she looked directly at me. You've done exactly the right thing. I blinked. I have. She nodded. You haven't responded emotionally. You've documented facts. That's the strongest position you can be in. Sandra pointed toward Brooke's live stream transcript. Several statements she made are demonstrably false. She claimed she merely held the baby. She claimed your husband threatened her. She claimed you started this. Sandra folded the papers neatly. If she continues making false public accusations, you may have legal options. I wasn't interested in money. I wasn't interested in revenge. I simply wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside our family. Somewhere nobody could erase it. Before we left, Sandra handed me a business card. There's someone you should consider speaking with. I looked down. The name belonged to an investigative journalist known for exposing influencer scandals and public deception. If your evidence checks out, Sandra said, this story is much bigger than one Christmas dinner. Garrett looked at me. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I slipped the card into my purse. For the first time, it felt like the truth might finally have a chance to be heard. And once that happened, nothing in Brooke's carefully built world would ever be the same. Stared at the journalist's business card for nearly an hour. Part of me wanted to throw it away. The other part knew there was no going back. For weeks, Brooke had been telling her version of the story to millions of people. If I stayed silent much longer, her version would become the only version anyone believed. Garrett sat beside me on the couch. You already know what you're going to do. I looked at him. Do I? He smiled. You wouldn't still be holding that card if you didn't. He was right. I picked up my phone and made the call. The journalist introduced herself as Donna Fielding. Her voice was calm and professional. She listened without interrupting while I explained everything from beginning to end. Christmas. The slap. My parents. The old documents. Grandma Ruth's letter. The years of hidden incidents. When I finished, there was a long silence. Finally, she spoke. I'm sorry your family has gone through this. Then her tone became more serious. But I need to be honest. We don't publish stories based on accusations. We publish facts. I understand. So if we're going to investigate this, I'll need evidence. I have it. Official records? Yes. Witnesses? Several. She paused again. Then send me everything. The next 2 days became a blur. Garrett helped me scan every document. We organized everything into digital folders. School reports, medical records, Grandma's handwritten notes, photographs of Marcus's bruises, screenshots of Brooke's live streams, threatening messages, emails from her publicist, fake hospital reviews. Nothing was left out. By the time we finished, we had created a timeline covering nearly 30 years. Looking at everything together was overwhelming. It wasn't just a family disagreement. It was decades of the same behavior repeating itself. Donna's team immediately began verifying every document. They contacted schools, hospitals, former neighbors, family members, anyone connected to the events. Days passed without updates. I tried to stay busy at work, but every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced. One afternoon, Donna finally called. We've confirmed the school transfer. I closed my eyes. Grandma had been telling the truth. Again. The hospital records also match. She continued. And we've spoken with 3 independent witnesses. My breathing became heavier. They all described the same pattern. For the first time since Christmas, someone outside my family believed me. Not because of emotion, because of evidence. Meanwhile, Brooke kept posting. Almost every day she uploaded smiling photos, inspirational quotes, videos about forgiveness. She never mentioned Lily by name. Instead, she referred to family drama. Her followers continued defending her. Many still believed she was the victim. She acted as though nothing had happened. Then something unexpected occurred. Several companies quietly removed Brooke from advertising campaigns. No public announcements. No dramatic statements. Her sponsored posts simply disappeared. People started asking questions. Where did the partnership go? Why aren't brands working with Brooke anymore? Rumors spread quickly. Brooke ignored them. At least publicly. Behind the scenes, things were very different. Tara, her publicist, sent me another email. This one sounded less confident. Chelsea. Brooke would like to resolve this privately before any further damage occurs. We're prepared to discuss an agreement that benefits everyone involved. Agreement. Another word for silence. Another attempt to make everything disappear. Just like my parents had done for years. I deleted the email without replying. A few days later, my mother called again. This time, she was crying. Real crying. Not angry. Not defensive, just exhausted. Please stop this. I didn't answer immediately. She continued. Your sister is falling apart. She's losing sponsors. People are attacking her online. I finally spoke. Mom, did Brooke ever call to ask how Lily was doing? Silence. Did she apologize? More silence. Did she admit she hit my daughter? Nothing. The only sound was quiet crying on the other end of the line. Finally, she whispered, No. I took a deep breath. Then we're done talking. Before she could answer, I ended the call. That evening, Garrett found me sitting on the porch watching the sunset. You okay? I think so. You don't sound convinced. I smiled sadly. I keep wishing my parents would choose what's right. He sat beside me. Maybe they don't know how. I looked toward the yard where Lily was laughing inside her playpen. Then I'll teach my daughter differently. Garrett reached over and held my hand. You already are. 3 days later, Donna called again. This story is ready. My heart nearly stopped. When will it air? Thursday evening. We've verified everything we legally can. She paused before adding one final sentence. I think people deserve to hear this. After hanging up, I looked toward Garrett. He didn't ask what she said. He already knew. The truth, after 30 years of silence, was finally about to become public. And once it did, nothing would ever be the same again. Thursday arrived faster than I expected. From the moment I woke up, I couldn't focus on anything else. The investigation was scheduled to air that evening. After nearly 30 years of silence, people were finally going to hear the truth. Not Brooke's version. Not my parents' excuses. The truth. I still went to work. Children continued arriving in the emergency room. Broken arms. High fevers. Asthma attacks. Life didn't stop just because mine had become complicated. Taking care of my patients helped keep my mind occupied. For a few hours, I almost forgot what was waiting for me that evening. Almost. When my shift ended, I drove home. Garrett had already picked up dinner. Neither of us had much of an appetite. Lily sat happily in her high chair, throwing tiny pieces of banana onto the floor. Watching her laugh reminded me exactly why I had refused to stay silent. This had never been about winning an argument. It had always been about protecting her. At exactly 6 o'clock, the special report began. The title appeared across the television screen. Behind the image, a family's 30-year secret. My heart pounded. Donna appeared on screen. She calmly introduced the investigation. This report examines documented allegations involving social media influencer Brooke Ashford and a pattern of behavior that family members say was hidden for decades. There were no dramatic headlines, no emotional music, just facts. Exactly as it should be. The report began with official documents. School records from 1995. Verified transfer paperwork. Hospital records. Letters preserved by my grandmother. Each document appeared on screen while Donna explained its significance. Everything had been independently verified. No speculation. No guessing. Only evidence. Then came the interviews. Stephanie spoke first. She described Thanksgiving 6 years earlier. She explained how Brooke had grabbed Marcus, how frightened he had been, how my parents convinced them to stay quiet. As she spoke, photographs of Marcus's bruised arm appeared on the screen. Looking at those pictures still made me sick. Next came Aunt Janine. She admitted something that took tremendous courage. I stayed quiet because I thought protecting the family was the right thing. She lowered her eyes. "I was wrong." Those 4 words carried more weight than an hour-long speech. Then the camera turned to me. I was wearing my hospital scrubs. No makeup. No dramatic lighting. Just me. Donna asked one simple question. "What happened on Christmas?" I answered exactly as I had rehearsed. "My sister slapped my 6-month-old daughter during Christmas dinner." My parents told me I was overreacting. I later discovered this wasn't the first time. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. Nothing more. Nothing less. The report ended with one final image. My grandmother's handwritten letter. Donna read a short passage aloud. "Protect your child, even if it costs you your family." The screen slowly faded to black. The broadcast was over. Garrett quietly reached for the remote and turned off the television. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. The truth was finally out. Within an hour, everything changed. News websites shared the investigation. Social media accounts reposted clips. Discussion videos appeared almost immediately. People who had supported Brooke for years suddenly began asking difficult questions. Is this real? Why are there official records? Why would multiple witnesses tell the same story? Why didn't Brooke mention any of this? The comments looked completely different now. People weren't blindly defending her anymore. They wanted answers. The following morning, the consequences began. One major sponsor announced it was ending its partnership with Brooke. A second company followed later that afternoon. By the end of the day, 3 sponsorships were gone. Her carefully built online empire was beginning to crack. Meanwhile, my phone remained surprisingly quiet. Instead of hateful messages, supportive ones began arriving. Parents, teachers, nurses, even complete strangers. Many shared their own stories. Stories about family members who had been protected instead of held accountable. Stories about children nobody believed. One message stayed with me. It simply said, "Thank you for choosing your daughter over everyone's comfort." I read it several times, because that was exactly what this had always been about. Late that evening, my father called. For several seconds, I stared at his name on the screen. He almost never called. I answered. Neither of us spoke immediately. Finally, his voice broke. I watched the investigation. I stayed silent. I should have stopped this years ago. There it was. The first honest sentence I'd ever heard from him about Brooke. I failed both of my daughters. Tears filled my eyes. Not because everything was suddenly okay. Because for the first time, he wasn't making excuses. He wasn't blaming anyone else. He was finally admitting the truth. "I'm sorry, Chelsea." Those words came decades too late. But they were real. "I can't change what happened," he whispered. "No," I answered quietly. "You can't." After we hung up, I walked into Lily's room. She was sleeping peacefully in her crib, completely unaware of everything happening around her. I gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "I kept my promise," I whispered. I protected you. For the first time since Christmas, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not because everything had been fixed, but because the truth no longer belonged only to me. The silence that had protected Brooke for 30 years was finally over. The days after the investigation aired felt strangely quiet. For weeks, my phone had been ringing nonstop. Messages, emails, threats, arguments. Then suddenly, there was silence. Not because people had stopped talking, because the truth had finally become louder than the lies. Brooke didn't disappear. She fought back. 2 days after the report aired, she announced another live stream. This time, she promised to answer every false accusation. More than 100,000 people joined within the first few minutes. Garrett looked at me. "Do you want to watch?" I thought about it, then shook my head. "No. I've heard enough lies." He smiled. "Good." We put Lily to bed instead. Our daughter deserved our attention far more than another performance. Later that night, Garrett showed me a few short clips. The difference was obvious immediately. Brooke looked exhausted. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles beneath her eyes. Her smile looked forced. Her confidence was gone. She spent nearly an hour blaming everyone except herself. The media, the internet, former sponsors, family members, even our grandmother. According to Brooke, everyone had betrayed her. Everyone except Brooke herself. Then something unexpected happened. She became angry. Really angry. She stopped crying. Stopped pretending. The calm, polished influencer disappeared. The real Brooke finally showed herself. She leaned toward the camera. Her voice grew louder. "My entire family has always been against me. They've always been jealous. They're trying to destroy everything I've built." Thousands of comments immediately appeared. Some defended her. Many didn't. People started asking difficult questions. If you're innocent, why are there official records? Why did several witnesses tell the same story? Why won't you answer the questions? Brooke read the comments. Her face changed. She lost control. Then she shouted something that immediately spread across the internet. "Can somebody just make them all shut up? For a moment." Everything went silent. Those words sounded hauntingly familiar. They were almost identical to what she had said on Christmas before striking Lily. People noticed immediately. Within minutes, clips of that moment flooded social media. Commentary channels replayed it over and over again. The internet wasn't watching an innocent woman anymore. They were watching someone completely unravel. The consequences came quickly. Another wave of sponsors ended their contracts. Companies removed advertisements featuring Brooke. Several brands released short public statements explaining that they did not wish to be associated with ongoing allegations involving child safety. Her management company quietly announced they were no longer representing her. Even her publicist, Tara, resigned. One short statement appeared online. "I wish Brooke the best moving forward." That was it. Years of partnership ended in one sentence. Over the next month, Brooke lost hundreds of thousands of followers. Every attempt to rebuild her image failed. Each new post attracted more questions than support. Eventually, she stopped posting altogether. For someone who had spent years sharing every moment of her life online, the silence was deafening. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to me. People at the hospital began recognizing my name. The days after the investigation aired felt strangely quiet. For weeks, my phone had been ringing nonstop. Messages, emails, threats, arguments. Then suddenly, there was silence. Not because people had stopped talking, because the truth had finally become louder than the lies. Brooke didn't disappear. She fought back. 2 days after the report aired, she announced another live stream. This time, she promised to answer every false accusation. More than 100,000 people joined within the first few minutes. Garrett looked at me. "Do you want to watch?" I thought about it, then shook my head. "No. I've heard enough lies." He smiled. "Good." We put Lily to bed instead. Our daughter deserved our attention far more than another performance. Later that night, Garrett showed me a few short clips. The difference was obvious immediately. Brooke looked exhausted. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles beneath her eyes. Her smile looked forced. Her confidence was gone. She spent nearly an hour blaming everyone except herself. The media, the internet, former sponsors, family members, even our grandmother. According to Brooke, everyone had betrayed her. Everyone except Brooke herself. Then something unexpected happened. She became angry. Really angry. She stopped crying. Stopped pretending. The calm, polished influencer disappeared. The real Brooke finally showed herself. She leaned toward the camera. Her voice grew louder. "My entire family has always been against me. They've always been jealous. They're trying to destroy everything I've built." Thousands of comments immediately appeared. Some defended her. Many didn't. People started asking difficult questions. If you're innocent, why are there official records? Why did several witnesses tell the same story? Why won't you answer the questions? Brooke read the comments. Her face changed. She lost control. Then she shouted something that immediately spread across the internet. "Can somebody just make them all shut up? For a moment." Everything went silent. Those words sounded hauntingly familiar. They were almost identical to what she had said on Christmas before striking Lily. People noticed immediately. Within minutes, clips of that moment flooded social media. Commentary channels replayed it over and over again. The internet wasn't watching an innocent woman anymore. They were watching someone completely unravel. The consequences came quickly. Another wave of sponsors ended their contracts. Companies removed advertisements featuring Brooke. Several brands released short public statements explaining that they did not wish to be associated with ongoing allegations involving child safety. Her management company quietly announced they were no longer representing her. Even her publicist, Tara, resigned. One short statement appeared online. "I wish Brooke the best moving forward." That was it. Years of partnership ended in one sentence. Over the next month, Brooke lost hundreds of thousands of followers. Every attempt to rebuild her image failed. Each new post attracted more questions than support. Eventually, she stopped posting altogether. For someone who had spent years sharing every moment of her life online, the silence was deafening. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened to me. People at the hospital began recognizing my name. Every piece carefully crafted. He had poured love into something after years of remaining silent. "I appreciate this," I said softly. "But things can't go back to the way they were." He nodded slowly. I know. For the first time in my life, my father accepted an answer without trying to change it. My mother never came. She sent birthday cards, holiday cards, small gifts for Lily, but never an apology, never accountability. I eventually realized something important. Missing someone isn't the same as changing. You can regret the consequences of your choices without ever taking responsibility for them. That was where my mother remained. 1 year later, life looked completely different. Garrett received orders transferring us to Washington State. I was promoted to charge nurse at the hospital. Lily celebrated her first birthday surrounded by people who genuinely loved her. Garrett's parents came. Aunt Janine came. Kevin. Stephanie. Marcus. There were no cameras. No live streams. No performances. Just family. Real family. The kind that protects children instead of protecting appearances. As everyone laughed in the backyard, I watched Lily take a few wobbly steps across the grass toward Garrett. She fell into his arms, laughing. I smiled. Then I quietly looked toward the sky. Thank you, Grandma. Without her courage, without her careful records, without that sealed letter, none of this truth would ever have come to light. She had protected us long after she was gone. Looking back now, I don't remember Christmas as the day my family fell apart. I remember it as the day I finally stopped confusing silence with love. For years, my parents believed keeping peace meant protecting the family. They were wrong. Real love doesn't ignore abuse. Real love doesn't excuse cruelty. Real love protects those who cannot protect themselves. That Christmas, I didn't lose my family. I simply discovered who truly deserved to be part of it. And if I ever have to choose again, between protecting someone's reputation or protecting my child, I'll make the same choice every single time.